The court next heard the Rule 29 motion, which, as I said previously, is a very routine procedure. It's the defendant's motion for an acquittal based on the grounds that they did not present sufficient evidence for the jury to reasonably convict this defendant. The defense argued that prosecutors failed to prove the alleged crimes. They said there was no evidence that Christina Karam, ex-chief of staff, knew of or facilitated coercion, and they argued that the government failed to prove Diddy coerced Cassie into intimate acts. Diddy also confirmed his decision not to testify. Let's look at this in more detail. Diddy's defense attorney started with their Rule 29 motion, stating that on count 1, Mr. Combs is entitled to a judgment of acquittal. The requirements of RICO have not been met. They have not shown the agreement to violate RICO nor agreement to 2 racketeering acts. They continued, the enterprise is more than a group of people. The enterprise's purposes here map onto the racketeering acts, trafficking, etc. See the Boyle case. A structural feature of a RICO enterprise, a hub and spoke. The rim, here it is a rimless hub. There is insufficient proof to establish this 20-year-long conspiracy. Mr. Combs did not conspire with any other person. They say an inner circle of bodyguards, but they fail to show it. There's only thin proof they engaged in crimes. At most, these are personal quantities of substances. They used a lot of Astroglide and baby oil and drank maybe some substances. Jonathan Perez said hotel nights were personal time with a female. Brendan Paul said hotel for the night. David James, one of Diddy's former assistants, said he saw a naked man in the hotel room but thought that wasn't part of his job. The intimacy with Cassie Ventura and Jane sometimes involved third parties, but they were not booked by staff. It brought them closer to Diddy. Jane said to Cabral Williams, "Don't want team to intercept you," and in May, Jane said she had to wait for the assistants to clear out. When KK and the guards learned of Mr. Combs' violence to Cassie Ventura, it's not racketeering, they did not help. They continue, there's no proof that KK knew or thought these women were being coerced. She did damage control. There is evidence that Mr. Combs was lying to her. KK is supposed to be the main co-conspirator, but she only appears in March 2016, 12 years in. There is no evidence between the breakup with Cassie in 2018 and the beginning with Jane in 2021. Even for a RICO conspiracy, they have to prove a single agreement. It hasn't been done here. Even if the court denied this Rule 29 motion, they continue, some should not go to the jury. Under the California law, the government had to show that the information was about to be given to law enforcement. Back in April, you found lack of probable cause. Mr. Combs was seeking to avoid negative publicity for both himself and Miss Ventura. There was no police involvement. The guard who testified said Miss Ventura did not want to report it. Miss Ventura said the same thing, as did Kerry Morgan, Cassie Ventura's former best friend. On obstruction, they have to show intimidation or threats to hinder or delay, citing Arthur Anderson versus US, that there must be consciousness of wrongdoing. Here, the incidents involve Mia and Jane. On Mia, there's no actus reus. That simply means a guilty act. This is about D-Rock trying to get Mia to speak with Combs, but it sounds like a normal conversation until her radar went off. No threats were communicated. All D-Rock said was Puff wanted to talk with Mia. They wanted her to say something. Her reactions could not have been foreseeable to D-Rock or Mr. Combs. She did not even answer Mr. Combs' calls later that day. D-Rock didn't bring up money. She did. She said she was out of dollars. D-Rock never acted on it. D-Rock said, "If you don't want to, all good." The prosecutors characterized these as nice messages. There was no evidence D-Rock or Mr. Combs thought Mia felt threatened, so this is not witness tampering. There would have to be proof Mr. Combs knew of a federal investigation at that time. There is none. With respect to Jane, they have November 19, 2023. No threats. Mr. Combs said, "This is when I need you to be there for me." Mr. Combs was already paying Jane's rent. There was nothing in the call about it. This is not corrupt persuasion. There's no federal nexus. Now they want to argue a 1591D. That would be a constructive amendment, as we'll say at the charge conference. Anyway, we think that statute is unconstitutional on forced labor. The statute was meant to enforce the 13th Amendment. It is used for domestic workers, here legally or not, forced to work squalid conditions. These are able-bodied USA citizens, perfectly capable of leaving. When they wanted to leave, they did. What the two are most afraid of was losing their job. With respect for Capricorn Clark, she continued to work to show she hadn't stolen. Not being paid overtime is not forced labor. Capricorn Clark said Mr. Combs told her to get the F out of my house. She says that was crossing my boundaries. She got a higher paid job. She alleged wrongful termination, presumably because she wanted to stay. Then 50 Cent with respect to Mia, she had a high GPA. She got her later job with Madonna, so the elements are not met with them either. On kidnapping, there is insufficient evidence as to 2 of the 3 allegations, even if you credit the US witnesses. Capricorn Clark and the lie detector test, Uncle Paulie took her to the building. This does not satisfy NY law. Mr. Combs didn't know. She went willingly every day. The other, Cassie, at the London hotel, she says she was taken there and held there for several days. California law has 4 elements not met here. On arson of Kid Cudi's car, no evidence Mr. Combs was involved. On count 2, Mr. Combs would have to know, I'll focus on his mens rea, which simply means guilty mind. It's about what he understood. How could he understand? Cassie said she did the freak-offs to make Mr. Combs happy. She didn't communicate reluctance. Look at the texts. In the Intercontinental, the fight happened after the night of intimacy, and there was no intimacy after the violence. The video seems to show that Mr. Combs, after he gets his cell phone, just sits in the chair in the elevator lobby, so no mens rea. As to Jane, she engaged in intimacy for economic benefit, for example, the house. There was only one incident of violence, which I'll get to. The fraud theory is deficient as a matter of law. Turk's trip ultimately happened. She wanted to go out to dinner. This would sweep in a lot of romantic partners. It has vagueness problems. People do this all the time. It's not fraud. Immigrants being tricked into intimacy for green cards is different. He's a wealthy individual but won't take her on a yacht. They never alleged trafficking of Jane until they found out she was alleging a circle incident of assault. That is telling. This theory of fraud is incredibly weak. The fight at Jane's house in LA, this single act is not sufficient. There's no evidence that escort came from outside of California. Escorts were paid for their time. Both witnesses said they were not prostitutes. Phillips and Hayes, they were called entertainers or escorts. Thank you, Your Honour. The government? The prosecutor then said there is more than enough evidence. Your Honour can reserve on that. Judge decided to reserve on this motion, and the prosecutor then said the defendant should be allocuted. I will be back with Diddy's decision not to testify and the defendant's case. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below.